If you're an ambitious brand, maybe looking to launch a new wellness line or scale up faster, you hit this point pretty quickly, right? The world of dietary supplements, it's exploding. And your manufacturing partnerships, they're absolutely critical. So today we're doing a deep dive into private label food supplements.
hmm
We really want to get into the operational stuff, the compliance factors you have to master when you're picking a manufacturer, someone who's a real partner, someone who reduces your risk.
Exactly. And for brands, look, it's not just about can they make enough product. It's really about mitigating risk and getting to market compliantly, but fast. But before we jump into strategy, we should probably clarify the terms. Our source material uses some precise definitions, and you hear these thrown around interchangeably, which honestly is pretty misleading.
Okay, yeah, good point. Let's unpack that right away. When we say partner, what are the main models? And private label specifically, what kind of control does that actually give you?
All right, so private label, it really sits in that sweet spot for scaling quickly. It's basically a partnership where your brand uses a manufacturer's existing verified capabilities. Think development, production, labeling, packaging, all under your brand name. The key thing, the emphasis in a good private label setup is tailored formulation and tight control over the supply chain. That lets brands move fast, from concept to shelf.
Got it. So it's not starting completely from scratch, but it's highly customized using their proven setup. How is that different from the other two, white label and ODM?
Well, the simplest is white label. That's where the product gets sold with like minimal changes. Think stock formulas, your logo slapped on. It's cheap, it's fast, but maybe lacks the traceability people want now. Then at the other end, you've got original design manufacturer, ODM. ODMs go furthest. They might offer product ideas, totally bespoke formulations, even help with your market entry strategy. Much more involved.
Okay, so if you need high control customization, but maybe not the huge R&D cost of ground zero, private label sounds like the way to go. Our goal today, then, is really to pull out those critical factors, regulations, supplier checks that give you that competitive edge.
Exactly. And the insight here is pretty clear. Success really hinges on integration. Industry watchers, they note that partnerships integrating regulatory readiness, transparent sourcing, and solid documentation, they just tend to outperform the generic programs by a long shot. Why? Because that integrated approach, it cuts risk while getting you on the shelf faster. That capability. Well, it can be the difference between surviving a recall and maybe not having one at all.
Right. Which brings us neatly to market dynamics. The sources are saying the key thing for 2025 is this idea of a one-stop private label partner. Speed matters, we get that, but what are consumers asking for now that makes compliance speed so vital?
Yeah, the consumer mandate, it's completely shifted things. How supplements have to be formulated, positioned, everything. Consumers, they increasingly demand clean labels, sustainable sourcing, and total ingredient transparency. So formulation choices, they're heavily shaped by personalization needs, coactive allergen controls, and definitely a preference for minimal processing.
So it's not enough anymore just to say, hey, our ingredient works, here's a study. You have to prove its whole journey.
Absolutely. To command that premium spot in a crowded market, brands must show verifiable source traceability, environmental stewardship, validated health claims. A strong private label program isn't just making a good product, it's aligning your brand story with these values, while still letting you scale. And the speed is necessary because trends change so fast. You need a partner who can tweak formulas based on what people want now, not last year.
And that scalability, it inevitably smacks right into the most complex bit, global regulation. The landscape varies hugely, right? Especially US versus the UK. It demands real sophistication from manufacturers. Let's get into that compliance maze.
This really is the make or break point. So in the U.S., you've got the DIA-AHEA framework for dietary supplements. The U.S. system, it puts the responsibility on manufacturers mainly. Ensure products are safe, accurately labeled. But it mostly operates with post-market surveillance. Essentially, if the product hits the market, then the FDA might step in to prove it's misbranded or unsafe.
Okay, so the manufacturer needs the proof, but the government's main check happens after launch.
Precisely. And claims are restricted. They have to be structure or function statements backed by credible evidence. Critically, you, the private label brand owner, you have to enforce tight internal reviews for those claims. You hold the proof. And you need rigorous post-market surveillance for any issues. That responsibility doesn't go away.
Okay, now let's hop across the Atlantic. How does the European system work? Is it similar?
Fundamentally different, actually. In the EU and the UK, it's governed by EFSA safety dossiers and the EU health claims framework. This system is way more restrictive. It relies on a pre-approval model for claims. Your formulations must align with a pretty narrow list of acceptable, tree-approved health claims. It's a much higher bar administratively.
Wow, okay, that is a huge difference. US, prove it if we ask. EU, only use claims we already okayed.
Correct. And because of this split, a lot of global brands, they actively look for manufacturers offering dual track support. That means handling translation, building dossiers, liaising with regulators for both the US and EU markets. If you want to hit the US market and, the 450 million consumers in Europe with one product, that dual capability is a massive time and cost saver.
Yeah, I can see that. That alone must save months of headaches. Okay, let's shift to operational excellence. We all know CGMP, current good manufacturing practices, that's just table stakes, non-negotiable. But here's where it gets interesting, right? What really separates the best suppliers? The ones showing true maturity, reducing your brand risk.
Right, beyond just baseline CGMP, the strong assurances, they come from formal, internationally recognized certifications. These prove their quality systems are documented, audited, and always improving. We're talking ISO 9001 for quality management. That means their procedures are standardized, consistent, makes your audits way easier.
And specifically for food safety.
That's where ISO 22000 and FSSC 22000 come in. They focus squarely on food safety hazard analysis, demonstrating a rigorous preventative approach. These aren't just badges for the wall, They show the supplier has systems audited by third parties, guarantees a level of quality you can count on.
And the paperwork behind those systems, that sounds crucial, especially if something goes wrong.
It's the invisible guarantee, really. Comprehensive records, batch records, stability data, third-party audit reports, they underpin everything, especially recall readiness. And speaking of things going wrong, a mature QA/QC program always includes robust corrective and preventive action plans, KPA.
Can you quickly define KPA for us? What does that actually involve?
Sure. KP is basically a structured process. You investigate a defect or deviation. You fix the immediate issue, that's a corrective action. But then critically, you implement systemic changes to make sure that same problem doesn't happen again. That's the preventive action, this documented discipline. It's the bedrock for long-term private label success. It ensures reliability and protects your brand if there's ever an inspection or, worse, litigation.
Okay, super important. So imagine you're a brand owner ready to issue an RFP, a request for a proposal, to scale up. You need a solid checklist for vetting these partners. Based on the sources, what are the absolute must-have evaluation criteria, the pillars of that assessment?
Yeah, there's a powerful 6-point framework we can pull out. First, unsurprisingly, is regulatory compliance. Don't just check if they have a compliance team. Assess their actual track record, their internal capacity for your specific claims, and their documented processes for U.S. substantiation and EU dossiers.
Makes sense. Pillar 2 must be about volume and being reliable, right?
Exactly. Scalability and capacity. You need to ask for realistic production lead times. Check their minimum order quantity flexibility. And, crucially, ask about their plans for peak demand. Can they ramp up production 5x if needed without quality slipping? They have to prove they can scale without sacrificing quality or deadlines.
Pillar 3 has to be ingredient transparency, given what consumers want.
Absolutely. Ingredient sourcing traceability. Essential for consumer confidence, huge for risk management, especially with global supply chains. You need to evaluate their allergen controls, make sure their documentation supports batch-level traceability for all your products, right back to the raw material lot number.
Okay. And Pillar 4 gets into the technical side, testing and validation.
Yes, quality assurance programs. You need to clarify. Is testing mainly in-house, or do they use accredited third-party labs? How often do they test? And how do those results actually feed into the final decision to release a batch? Strong, frequent QA testing really cuts down defect rates.
Fifth, the dollars and cents. If you're signing a multi-year deal, how do you protect your profit?
Pricing and contracts. You've got to understand their pricing models. Is it fixed, tiered, linked to commodity prices? That's vital. And you should look for price protection mechanisms. Maybe locking in certain commodity costs for a period that helps manage volatility and protect your margins over time. And the last pillar, the day-to-day operational stuff. Lead times and delivery. Confirm their standard lead times for standard and custom formulas, and honestly, review their on-time delivery history. It sounds simple, but it's probably the most practical predictor of their overall operational discipline.
That 6-point framework feels incredibly actionable. Okay, let's zoom back into the product itself for a minute. Formulation. Decisions need to balance bioavailability, how well the body actually uses the ingredient, with that critical, clean label positioning.
Correct. You want to prioritize ingredients with solid safety profiles, clear certificates of analysis COAs. But to really hit that modern consumer appeal, especially in natural markets, you have to actively screen out certain red flag ingredients.
Can you give a couple of examples, things that might be technically allowed but are raising consumer eyebrows now?
Sure. Well, things like titanium dioxide for whiteness, carrageenan as a thickener, certain artificial dyes. Even if they're legally okay in many places, consumer pressure is really mounting against them. So, ingredient selection needs to deliver the wellness benefits, yes, but also consciously avoid those additives, synthetic binders, artificial colors. Keep that clean label promise intact.
Right. So if we tie this all together, look ahead, what are the big emerging trends? Things brands need to demand from partners now to kind of future-proof their operations?
Two big areas are really standing out: sustainability and digital traceability. On sustainability, brands are now requiring partners who can actually quantify environmental impact, support sustainable supply chains, and importantly, reduce packaging. Using certified recycled content, post-consumer materials, that's fast-paying standard, not optional.
And digital traceability, that sounds like the next evolution of that paper trail we keep talking about.
It really is the ultimate evolution. Technologies like blockchain, they're gaining serious traction for end-to-end visibility in real time. This means batch-level transparency, maybe via a QR code on the pack. Consumers get instant access to quality data, sourcing proof, that level of real-time digital trust. It's quickly becoming a major differentiator.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the brand owner listening? We've gone through the whole journey, haven't we? Defining the partnership models, navigating the tricky US versus EU regulations, and setting up that solid six-pillar framework for checking out suppliers. It seems clear. Speed to market is the goal, yeah, but that speed must be built on disciplined compliance.
That discipline, the stuff happening behind the scenes, that's truly the most valuable part. Faster production is great, sure. But disciplined documentation, those robust KP plans, meticulous batch records, stability data, detailed audit histories, that is the critical component for sustained success in private label. That discipline protects your margins. It ensures compliance when inspectors show up. And ultimately, it's what builds long-term consumer trust. Which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over. When you're choosing that partner, how much value are you really placing on the paper trail that guarantees your future stability?